it's Dave at No Recipe Required, and we're going to do another meal kit review. This one from Plated. I got a box today, seared steak with a tomato, like a sherry tomato sherry vinaigrette. It actually looks like a nice sauce, looks like a nice recipe. We're going to go ahead and give it a try, see how easy it is to cook, and of course, see how it tastes at the end. Let's go ahead and get started. All right, guys, so we're going to go ahead and start cooking, or prepping anyway, our steak and cherry tomato with cherry tomato vinaigrette. I've got some green beans that came in our plated box. Now, like I said, this is the only ingredient so far that looks a little beat up, but still pretty fresh, still pretty nice. Got one more bean here. Easiest thing to do, like I just saw, you want to remove these the ends, line all the beans up. You can do like 10 of them at once or so. I've got some chives here that we're gonna slice up and dice. Same thing as the beans, actually. Just take them, that's a bean, take them, line them up, and run the knife through them. Give them a nice quick dice. This is a good amount of chives, which have a beautiful onion, light onion flavor. I've got a nice little bunch of prep containers here. Easiest thing to do with all cooking, but certainly with these boxes, is get all your ingredients prepped before you start cooking. And we've got some red bliss potatoes here, which we're going to dice these up as well. It says in 1-inch pieces. I go in half, then in half again, then in half one more time. And as you cut the potatoes, just drop them in a pot full of water, room temperature water, which is what we're going to cook them in, and that'll keep the whites from browning at all. If you just leave them exposed to air, the whites will brown. So I'm going to finish doing these potatoes, and we're going to come back and start our tomato vinaigrette. All right, time to make our sherry vinaigrette for our steaks. I've got a pan here. This is obviously a pan. That's not a technical term. I've got it over medium heat. A little bit of olive oil in there. I used about a tablespoon. Olive oil is one of the few things that doesn't come with the plated box. I think it's really olive oil, salt, and pepper, just about it. And the thing I didn't show you on the prep is it came with a shallot. It came with a whole shallot. I just diced it up. I'm going to add the shallot to the olive oil. Again, over medium heat. It's just starting to sizzle. Maybe you can hear it if I go like that. It's going to soften up. The shallots are going to soften up in about a minute. The one thing you don't want to do is burn these shallots. They'll go pretty quickly because they're pretty small. So it's really just going to be about a minute, and then we're going to add our tomatoes. All right, so I've hit my minute mark, although I didn't really time it. What I'm really looking for is the change in color on the shallots. You want to see them go a little bit translucent. Here are my tomatoes. I still got a couple leaves on them. Frankly, not a huge deal if the leaves stay in there, but I should have cleaned them off a little bit more before cooking them. I'm just going to go make sure my heat's not too hot. We'll let our tomatoes just kind of sit there, and they're going to eventually heat up, and the skins are going to start to burst. Just let them sit. Don't rattle them around for about 5 minutes or so. Okay, so I've got my tomatoes going over here. The recipe actually says to finish off the tomato vinaigrette before starting the steaks, but my family is hungry, so I'm going to try and multitask here. By all means, you can finish these off, finish off the tomatoes, let it rest, but you can also start the steaks at the same time. These are the pre-wrapped steaks. I just unpackaged them, let them sit on the cutting board for about 20 minutes to come up to room temperature. Season both sides liberally with salt and pepper. Again, I think that's the only two ingredients along with the olive oil that don't come. I've got a pan here, nice and hot. You want to hear a nice sizzle as you drop the steaks in. That's going to get a nice caramelized crust on the outside. Don't touch them. Just let it sear, let it sit for about 4 minutes or so, and then we're going to flip them, and we're only going to flip them once. All right, so our steaks have gone about 3 minutes or so. I'm going to flip them in a minute, but first I'm going to come over and toss our tomatoes around. Looking at the shallots that are in there, they are starting to brown up. So honestly, my modification would be add the tomatoes before the shallots. Let them go for 4 or 5 minutes, then add the shallots. What I'm going to do now, because the tomatoes are burning a little bit, is just add a few tablespoons, or the shallots are burning a little bit, add a few tablespoons of water to the pan, just to make sure they don't get too dark. And we're going to continue to cook these tomatoes. Now, our steak, I have not flipped them up, I haven't touched them yet, I haven't shaken the pan, I haven't done anything. I got the pan nice and high heat. We're going to flip them over and we're going to see that nice caramelized crust. That's what we're looking for. Same thing on this side. I'm going to turn them over, let them go about 4 minutes. 4 minutes on each side. That's going to get you to medium rare. If you want more medium or you're well done, heaven forbid, just go ahead and cook them longer. You may have to turn them a few times if you really want them well done. Alright guys, so steaks have now been hit for about 4 minutes on each side. Again, that caramelized crust is what we're looking for. If you want them to go longer, you want them to get more cooked through, you could flip them back over and let them go like another 2 minutes per side and keep doing that. You can slot them into a 400-degree oven as well. Ingredients say though, pull them off when they are cooked and set them to rest aside, which I will do right there. Our tomatoes are still going here. I think mine still need a little bit more time. Again, recipe modifications. I'd cook or plan for a longer time with the tomatoes. The other thing that the ingredients suggest, or the directions suggest, is you do the steaks, do the tomatoes, do the steaks. You can certainly do the tomatoes ahead of time. You can do those in the afternoon. Then, after you do the steaks, do the potatoes. This is the water we set them in, 1-inch dice. I'm going to bring them up to a boil and then go until they're just starting to become tender. Honestly, I probably would do the potatoes before the steaks, because potatoes, they can kind of sit around and wait for a while. The steaks should sit for 3 or 4 minutes, but I would want to serve them right after that. So I'm going to bring this to a boil. Let's get these tender. We'll finish off our tomatoes. Alright, so real quick update on our tomatoes. Again, most of them are looking pretty tough, or still pretty firm. This one is softening up, but the water I put in the pan is running out, and I still don't want those shallots to burn. So I'm just going to add a little bit more water. You can continue to do this. Not a big deal, because the water is just going to evaporate, the flavors will concentrate, it'll all be fine. You really just don't want anything to burn in the pan. I think those are going to take another 5 or 6 minutes, just lightly simmering. Okay, so our tomatoes are now kind of cooked down. They are soft, they are mushy, and importantly, any water that I put in the pan has evaporated out. They're now, again, soft to the touch. The ask is to take a wooden spoon, whatever spoon you got, and just give these tomatoes a bit of a smash so you get those juices flowing. You want to do this, I would do this on the heat so that any of that rawness that is still maybe in the center of the tomato has a bit of time to cook down. We're going to let this just heat through, or get all the way through, make sure we got our big chunks of tomato cooked down, or smashed up I should say. And then I'm going to let this go for just 30 seconds more. Okay, my tomatoes now have cooked down. I've smashed them up. This is sherry vinegar that came in the package. I'm going to hit that in the pan. We're going to kill the heat. Hit it with a little bit of salt and pepper. And a little bit of fresh olive oil. Just about a tablespoon or so. Maybe a touch more. And this is our essentially warm vinaigrette. If you find it's too soupy, maybe you got some juicy tomatoes, you can just let it keep it on the heat until it thickens up a little bit. This is fine though. It's going to actually thicken a little bit as it cools. And you want to give it a little taste. Alright, yeah, that's nice. Fresh, nice tomatoes. I've got our chopped up chives here. I'm not going to add this until the last second because I don't really want the chives to wilt down. I'm going to pull that off the heat. I've got our potatoes here. We're going to give them the knife test. As they get tender, they're just getting tender. So I'm going to keep them on the heat, and then in about 1 minute, when they are just a slight bit more tender, I'm going to add our green beans directly to the boiling water, and I'm going to cook these for about 2 minutes. I like them still kind of firm and crunchy. Alright, so our vinaigrette is done. Our steaks are cooked. Our potatoes are just barely tender. Green beans in. The green beans are room temperature, so that's going to cool the water down. So I'm turning up the heat to bring it back to a boil. Just give it a bit of a stir. I'm also going to add, if I can find it, a little bit of salt to the water. I think cooking the beans in salted water is a nice little tip. I don't have the salt right next to me. I'm going to go grab it. Beans are only going to take about 2 minutes. All right, so you really want to make sure your potatoes are tender. These ones are pretty good. You want to make sure your beans are tender. You know, honestly, the easiest way to check a bean is take a bite. That's where I like it, nice and still nice and crunchy. I'm going to kill the heat. We're going to go drain this and then put the potatoes and the beans back in the same pot. All right, so we got our pot of potatoes and beans back. I don't even know that you need the heat. If anything, just low heat. You can reheat your vinaigrette now if you need to. I'm just going to throw the heat back on there. If it is seized up, no, burner's not catching. There we go. If it is seized up and gotten too thick on oh, there we go. The heat will, you know what? We're switching burners. The stove is not cooperating with me, so we'll put it back there. You can always add a little bit of water if it's too thick for you. I think we're good. I'm going to hit that with our chives. I'm going to hit, oh, I already did a little bit of olive oil. And our beans and potatoes. They give us some Parmesan cheese to throw in there. Some fresh ground black pepper and salt. For seasoning, I like kosher salt. Make sure our vinaigrette is good. We'll just take this, stir in our chive. That looks like a nice consistency to me. And then we're just going to toss our potatoes and the beans. I like the little Parmesan trick on there. That's going to give it a nice kind of salty, nutty flavor. Kill the heat. You don't really want the cheese melted. It should just be nice little chunks on there. And you know what? I think we're done. Let's go ahead and plate this guy up. All right, let's go ahead and plate up our plated steak with tomato vinaigrette. One of the things I want to show you, the steaks, as they rested, release some of their juices. That's perfectly fine. I'm actually going to go ahead and add that to our vinaigrette. Get a little more flavor in there. We're going to take our steaks over to a cutting board. And then it asks you to cut the steaks on the bias. Looks like the grain, if you look carefully, the grain kind of moves along in one direction. And what you want to do is make sure you cut that steak in the right direction. I like maybe 1/2 inch slices on our steak. Now, again, I would have done kind of the steak last. I think it would be a little bit warmer, but perfectly fine. It's still going to taste awesome. We're going to go ahead and fan our steak out like so, and you can hopefully see that is nice and medium rare, at least what I would call medium rare. Put our fan back on there. Do a tiny hand rinse. We've got our potatoes and green beans with that Parmesan cheese mixed in there, stacked high and delicious right on our plate. Our tomato vinaigrette, which we just added that residual, you know, the bleed off of the steak. It's not really blood, don't freak out that I said bleed off. We're going to put our tomato vinaigrette kind of right on top. You still want to be able to see the steak. You may want to you could do some underneath the steak as well, but I like being able to see our meat there. We'll give you a look. There you go. Looks nice and beautiful. Let me get it out of the light. I love that. We'll give it a little taste here. I got two forks. We're going to go right in the middle, get a piece of our steak with our vinaigrette. Forgive my fingers. That is actually really good. Steak, a little chewy, but that's fine. I think this cut actually natural, and you got lots of flavor. We'll try our bean. Once again, tastes nice and fresh. Potato. with that Parmesan. I like it, highly applaud. Good job plated, and I'll see you next time on No Recipe Required. Alright, that was plated cherry tomato vinaigrette and steak. I actually really like this vinaigrette. Tasted nice and sharp, good acid there. It went with the steak really well. But it did take quite a bit longer than the recipe card said. I think you gotta factor that in. I followed some of the tips I put into the video itself. Overall, the taste was really good. Liked it. Go ahead, check it out. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. I'll throw a link in the description to buy directly from Plated, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'll see you next time on No Recipe Required.